Hi. So this is a continuation of the video that I last covered, that was on Friedrich Nietzsche, and I'm reading the book The Birth of Tragedy. This is my philosophy series, as they call it, and currently I'm just reading the beginning of this book, which is written by Nietzsche, and the title of that particular chapter is Attempt at a Self-Criticism. So the last time that I read this was the first four segments of this particular chapter, Attempt at a Self-Criticism. Today I'm going to read the last three, and this is going to be fun because he's presenting some really strong ideas that he has about the established systems that are currently there around us in the society, wherever you go. And I'll first read the chapter bit, and then I'll give a bit of my monologue, and then I'll expect you guys to comment on the comment section and convert it into a conversation if you like. So yeah, Attempt at a Self-Criticism, the fifth segment. Already in the preface to Richard Wagner, art and not morality is presented as the properly metaphysical activity of man. In the book itself, the suggestive principle is voiced a number of times, to the effect that the existence of the world is justified only as an aesthetic phenomenon. In fact, the entire book knows only one overt and implied artistic meaning behind all events: a god, if you will, but certainly only an entirely thoughtless and amoral artist god, who in both creating and destroying, in doing both good and evil, wishes to experience that same joy and glory, who creating worlds rids himself of the affliction of abundance and superabundance, of the suffering of his internal contradictions. The world at every moment the successful redemption of God, the ever-changing, ever-new vision of the most afflicted, contrary, contradictory being, who can find redemption and deliverance only in illusion. We might deem the whole of this artist's metaphysic arbitrary, idle, and fantastic. What is significant about it is that it already betrays a spirit which will defy all risks to oppose the moral interpretation and significance of existence. Here we see heralded, perhaps for the first time, a pessimism beyond good and evil. We see formulated the perversity of attitude, at which Schopenhauer never tried of hurling his most furious curses and thunderbolts. A philosophy that dares to demote morality and locate it in the phenomenal world, and not only among the phenomena, in the technical sense of the term, as used by the idealists, but among the deceptions, as illusion, delusion, error, interpretation, artifice, art. Perhaps the profundity of this counter-moral tendency is best gauged by the discreet and hostile silence with which Christianity is treated throughout the whole book. Christianity is the most extravagant elaboration of the moral theme that humanity has ever heard. Truly nothing could be more opposed to the purely aesthetic interpretation and justification of the world as taught in this book than Christian doctrine, which is only moral and seeks only to be moral, with its absolute standards, the truth of God, for example, which relegates art, all art, to the realm of falsehood. It denies, condemns, and damns it. In this system of ideas and values, which must be hostile to art if it is to be in any way consistent with its principles, I had always sensed hostility to life, a furious, vindictive distaste for life itself. For all life is based on appearance, art, deception, point of view, the necessity of perspective and error. From the start, Christianity was essentially and fundamentally the embodiment of disgust and antipathy for life, merely disguised, concealed, got up as the belief in an other or a better life. Hatred of the world, the condemnation of the emotions, the fear of beauty and sensuality, a transcendental world invented the better to slander this one. Basically, a yearning for non existence, for repose until the Sabbath of Sabbaths. All of this, along with Christianity's unconditional resolve to acknowledge only moral values, struck me as the most dangerous and sinister of all possible manifestations of a will to decline. At the very least, a sign of the most profound affliction, fatigue, sullenness, exhaustion, impoverishment of life. For in the face of morality, particularly Christian, unconditional morality, life must constantly and inevitably be in the wrong, because life is something essentially amoral, in the end crushed beneath the weight of contempt and eternal denial. Life must be felt to be undesirable, valueless in itself. Morality itself, might morality not be a will to the denial of life? A secret instinct of annihilation, a principle of decay, trivialization, slander, the beginning of the end? And hence the danger to end all dangers? And so then, with this questionable book, my instinct, an affirmative instinct for life, turned against morality and invented a fundamentally opposite doctrine and valuation of life, purely artistic and anti-Christian. What should I call it? As a philologist and man of letters, I baptized it, not without a degree of license, for one who knows the true name of the Antichrist. With the name of a Greek god, I called it the Dionysiac. Okay, so this was the fifth segment of the attempt at a self-criticism by Nietzsche in this book, The Birth of Tragedy. And he's, as he was earlier criticizing the superabundance of the Greek culture. In the last video, you can appreciate that I talked about something known as neuroses of health, something known as a tragedy which is emerging from joy, a tragedy which is emerging from overflowing health, excessive abundance. And he's continuing that very idea in this segment as well, when he says that one who rids himself of the affliction of abundance and superabundance, of the suffering of his internal contradictions, is something that the so-called God was doing while he created us. And I believe that he's not talking about God in the usual sense that we think of God to be as. He's talking about a God who is particularly thoughtless and amoral, according to him. He's an artist God, and from his perspective, from Nietzsche's perspective, and as what he's constantly as what he's constantly trying to focus on is that art is a metaphysical form which exists um, beyond any other metaphysical form that there is. And he's criticizing morality in this particular segment, which is glorified by Christianity, for example. And again, I'd like to uh, clarify at this particular moment. I'm not talking about bigger concepts here. I'm not talking about Christianity in my videos, or I'm not talking about democracy in our videos. I'm talking about what Nietzsche, I'm talking about my understanding towards what Nietzsche might be trying to convey in his writings. So I don't want you guys to confuse that I have particular views. As for now, I am still exploring what is the idea behind his philosophy, behind this book that he was trying to share with his recent surroundings, or probably in the future when he goes away, wanted the humanity to ponder upon, the ideas he wanted us to ponder upon. So I'm still exploring that. So according to this particular segment, he's becoming overly critical about Christianity's morality, and what he's focusing on is that according to him, he's saying that morality is emerged from this particular idea that life in itself is currently a bad life. It's something which is disgusting. It is something that you have to make distance from, you have to disconnect from, in order to pursue a path in which probably you will find that richness, probably you will find that goodness after you have left, after you have died. The concept of heaven, that when you die you will go to heaven, is something which Christianity is focusing upon. According to this particular segment, is what he's saying. And he's saying that morality is somewhere moving away, walking away from the actual reality. And the reality here, he is saying, is that the point of views, the necessity of perspectives and errors is what actually life is. And morality is asking you to stay away from that path, to abandon art. And that's interesting because religion and any such belief system that is designed to guide the masses is somehow criticized by this philosopher in a manner that it's focusing only one part of life. It's focusing only on, what to say, the disgust. I don't know. I'm falling short of words here because this sounds very hostile. This sounds very, hateful towards something which existed back then and still exists. So I'm not really I'm trying to make sense here. But I think I need to think about this more. So I'll continue. So I'll continue to the sixth segment. I'll keep thinking about this as well. We'll have a word on this. So the sixth segment. Is it clear that what task I already dared to tackle with this book? How I now regret that I did not even then have the courage or the immodesty to permit myself a new language as well, in all respects, in keeping with such new ideas and risky innovations. That I toiled with Schopenhauerian and Kantian formulae to express strange and new valuations fundamentally opposed to the spirit and taste of Kant and Schopenhauer. What, after all, were Schopenhauer's ideas about tragedy? In the second part of his World as Will and Representation, he says, what gives everything tragic, whatever the form in which it appears, its characteristic tendency to the sublime, is the dawning of the knowledge that the world and life can give no true satisfaction and are therefore not worth our attachment to them. It is in this that the tragic spirit consists. Accordingly, it leads to resignation. How differently Dionysus spoke to me. How far I was then from all that resignationism. But the book contains something far worse, something that I now regret even more than having obscured and spoiled the Dionysiac intermissions with Schopenhauerian formulae. The fact that I spoiled the grandiose Greek problem, as I saw it, by adulterating it with the most modern ideas. That I introduced hopes where all was hopeless, where everything all too clearly indicated an ending. That I, on the basis of the most recent German music, began to fabulate about the German spirit, as if it were on the point of discovering, refinding itself. At a time when the German spirit, which not long before had had the will to conquer Europe, the strength to lead Europe, had in its last will and testament finally abdicated the task under the pompous pretext of founding an empire, and was making the transition to mediocrity, democracy, and modern ideas. In the intervening period, in fact, I have learned to think hopelessly and mercilessly enough about that German spirit, and likewise about contemporary German music, which is romantic through and through, and the most un-Greek of all possible art forms, but also a narcotic of the worst kind, doubly dangerous to a people beloved of intoxication, which hails lack of clarity as a virtue, with its dual properties of being both an intoxicating and a befogging narcotic, and yet apart, of course, from all the impetuous hopes and applications to contemporary issues with which I spoiled my first book, the great Dionysiac ? Remains, also as regards music. And how would a music be that was not romantic in origin as German music is, but Dionysiac? Okay, this is good. So constantly, Nietzsche is he's constantly in touch with other philosophers of maybe his time or maybe before his time, and of course he is well educated on this particular topic, with specifically that of tragedy. And Immanuel Kant and Schopenhauer have also given the ideas of tragedy in their philosophies. I'll cover the Schopenhauer and the Nietzsche's dialogue solely on tragedy in one of my next videos. So he is asking himself, he's introspecting that whether he has not misunderstood the idea of Dionysiac, and whether he has not misplaced the Kantian and the Schopenhauerian element of the Dionysiac, and merged it with tragedy. And in that, one more thing that I'm constantly seeing in this particular book is that he is in conflict with the Greek problem. There is a Greek situation in Germany, and so he's referring to there is a German spirit and then there is a Greek spirit, and They both are in conflict with each other. And what he's saying is that the German spirit is somehow he's giving form to it, and he's taking the form of the contemporary German music. He's saying that the German music is romantic through and through, and he's comparing it with the Greek forms, which is absolutely non-romantic. And then he's labeling it as the Dionysiac, like the Greeks as the Dionysiacs. I'm sorry, the Germans as the Dionysiacs. I'm really sorry. Because the Greeks are, according to this particular segment, are the way he was describing as the Christians. And the Christians have a rigid form, they have a structure which abhors the arts and the metaphysical explorations of the mind and of the soul. So yeah, this particular line, that the German music, which is romantic through and through, but also a narcotic of the worst kind, doubly dangerous to a people beloved of intoxication, while it hails lack of clarity as a virtue, with its dual properties of being both an intoxicating and a befogging narcotic. He is telling that romanticism in particular is something like that you get addicted to it. And that's why the Greek forms, which are more Dionysiac, which are more non-artistic per se, are not that appealing, or they're not that attractive. So he's simply exaggerating his ideas from the fifth segment into the sixth segment, expanding the horizons and looking beyond his current systems. Tell me what you guys think. I'll move on to the last segment of this chapter, and then I'll end this video. I'll try to make this short. But what, my good man, is romanticism if it is not your book? Can the profound hatred of the contemporary age, reality, and modern ideas be taken further than it is in your artist's metaphysics, which would rather believe in nothing, in the devil, than in the now? Does a ground base of anger and destructive rage not growl through all your contrapuntual, ear-seducing vocal art, a furious resolution against everything contemporary, a will that seems not too much removed from practical nihilism, and which seems to say, I would rather nothing were true than that you were right, that your truth would triumph? Listen yourself, my dear pessimist, my dear idolater of art, with a more open ear, to a single passage taken from your book, that not uneloquent, dragon-slaying passage, which might sound insidiously Pied Pipperish to innocent young ears and hearts. Is that not the good old romantic credo of 1830, lurking behind the mask of the pessimism of 1850? And behind it, the introduction to the familiar romantic finale: break, breakdown, return, and collapse before an old faith, before the old God. What? Is your pessimistic book not itself a piece of anti-Hellenism and romanticism? Is it not itself something as intoxicating as it is befogging? A narcotic at any rate, even a piece of music, of German music. But listen, let us imagine a rising generation with such an undaunted gaze, with such a heroic proclivity for the tremendous. Let us imagine the bold stride of those dragon slayers, the proud audacity with which they turn their backs on all the weaklings' doctrines that lie within that optimism in order to live resolutely in all they that do. Must the tragic man in that culture trained through his self-education for seriousness and terror, not inevitably yearn for a new art of metaphysical consolation, tragedy, as is Helen, and to exclaim as Faust did, and should I not with utmost yearning seek to bring to life that creature most unique? Would it not be necessary? No, thrice no. You young romantics, it would not be necessary. But it is very likely that it will end up like that you will end up like that, consoled. As it is written, for all your self-education and gravity and terror, metaphysically consoled, in short, as romantics end up Christian. No. You ought first to learn the art of this worldly consolation. You should learn to laugh, my young friends. If you are determined to remain pessimists, perhaps as laughers, you will consign all metaphysical consolations to the devil, and metaphysics in front of all the rest. Or to say it in the language of the Dionysiac monster called Zarathustra, lift up your hearts, my brothers, high and higher. And don't forget your legs. Lift up your legs too. Good dancers, and even better, stand on your heads. This laugher's crown, this rosary crown, but I myself put on this crown, I myself pronounced my laughter holy. I could find no one else today strong enough for that. Zarathustra, the dancer, Zarathustra, the light one, who beckons with his wings, poised for flight, beckoning to all the birds, poised and ready, blissfully flightly. Zarathustra, the soothsayer, Zarathustra, the sooth laugher, not impatient, not unconditional, who loves leaps and caprices. I crown myself with this crown of the laugher, the rosary crown. To you, my brothers, I throw this crown. I pronounced laughter holy, you higher men. Learn to laugh. And thus spoke Zarathustra, part 4, on the higher man. So he wraps it up. And I'll try to wrap up this video. He tries to wrap up the romantic idea of looking beyond morality and looking beyond, even beyond tragedy. This is purely my monologue on this, and he is taking the example of German music, and he is telling that this book is also intoxicating in a sense. Is it not? It's befogging in a sense, is it not? Because it's moving beyond logic. It's trying to explore something more than logic. And he's questioning the modern ideas, at the same time he's accepting the modern ideas. And coming to the absurd ending, he says he is somewhere very sure that only the pessimists will be attracted towards this kind of writing. And he asks them that you first learn to laugh and then proceed. Then proceed towards any philosophy, specifically towards a pessimistic philosophy such as this particular book, The Birth of Tragedy. Because he's going to dismantle each and every thought that you have ever created in your head. This is what it seems like. And Thus Spoke Zarathustra is also one of the legendary books which he has written in his time. I'll try to consolidate some of the ideas and give those ideas directly to you. I'll not read that book. It's a huge book and it's hell difficult for me to translate it into simpler language. So yeah, I've ended the attempt at a self-criticism and I'm still hopeful to get some reviews, some comments, and I'm still hopeful to receive from you guys, some form of dialogue, arguments, if you feel like, and you can just simply shout it out that what the hell are you talking about? Like, your monologue doesn't make sense. You can tell me that my interpretations are not what this book is trying to convey, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm ready to take on that, dialogue. I'm ready to bring out a conversation out of these ideas. So yeah, I'm hopeful that we guys will catch up soon again. I'll I'll bring more concise ideas from now on. This is now slowly it's taking some form in my head, and now I'm trying to come up with a script rather than performing extempore. So thank you everybody to listen to this and to watch this video, and yeah, I'll cover other ideas from Nietzsche and from other philosophers as well. As I said, Kant and Schopenhauer also gave their ideas on tragedy, and there is a particular article by Britannica on Schopenhauer and Nietzsche on tragedy. So I'll try to make a script on that, and then I'll share it with you guys. So yeah, thank you so much to watch this video. Please do comment, and please put up your views and your interpretations as well. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.